Do, do. There we are. We are live. Hello, everybody. We are live. Let me click over here on Instagram. Takes a second to kick in and it's a go over there. Awesome. So first off,
it's just coming out. Sorry.
well, perhaps it's not that kind of show. People who are tuning in right now are like, what did I just join? Well, all right. First off, thank you to everybody who is joining us, whether you're joining us live, whether you're watching this recorded. If you're joining us live, I forewarn you, I am not sure what's about to unfold. Literally, maybe. And then thank you, Monica, for being here. So a couple quick things I just like to tell everybody beforehand. The comments don't always feed over. Sometimes they do, and I'm just very focused on the conversation, so I don't even catch them going. But I always go back to the social media channels after the fact and respond if there's any comments or questions. But just so people know that, if we don't respond to what you're saying right away, it's not that we're ignoring you. We're just engaged in the conversation. And please feel free to go ahead and comment, participate. And of course, at the end, I'll give you an opportunity to get Monica's contact information. So if there's something that you want to talk to her about, which I'm highly likely is going to happen, then you will be able to reach out to her. And all of that said, now Monica and I had our pre-conversation before the conversation. So we're all ready to go. Monica, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I'm Monica Hershaft, and I am a mystery illness expert. And what I mean by that is there are many people out there that struggle with chronic symptoms, and then they go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, your labs are normal. There's nothing wrong. You probably just need to exercise more. It's your age. You're depressed. You have chronic fatigue, yada, yada, yada. And what I do is go, you're not wrong. It's not in your head. Let's talk about why you have symptoms before it shows up in labs and what you can do about it so that you don't feel like a crazy person, like you're being gaslit. And so I did one-on-one for a really long time, very customized. And now we have a membership community where we provide all this information, support, resources, and action steps to take to get out of this confusion and overwhelm and get results and basically get the owner's manual to your body. Because I went through this myself for 10 years. I could not live a normal life. And it really doesn't have to be like this. There are solutions and there's information that your regular doctor can't provide just because they don't have that kind of training. They're just trained to basically put you on a drug and squash the symptoms based on your labs. And so there are other resources out there, and that's what we're about.
Yeah, well, and of course, I'm going to invite you to share more about your health story because it provides the context for everything, and it's really in many ways it's the backbone of your credentials. There are all these other credentials and things that you can have, but your knowledge for having gone through it and the emotion behind it. And I think what you were just saying, which touches on what I'm sure a lot of people are feeling, when you feel like what you're saying isn't valid or people are saying, oh, there's nothing really wrong. Now you feel bad physically and you feel like there's something you're like, it's your fault somehow, which just adds to it. So I think from the moment that somebody kind of acknowledges, hey, there's something wrong, you already start to feel a little better because you feel like, okay, there's a path, there's hope here. So let's go back to the start of when you first started symptoms and maybe walk people through what you experienced. And then I want to talk about the way that you help people.
Yeah, thank you. It was really, really difficult for me because, and we'll get into some of my background as to what led up to me getting sick. But before we do that, I really want to talk about the emotional roller coaster that getting sick put me on in terms of the people in my life and how it impacted my self-esteem and my identity and everything that made me who I thought I was as a human on the planet. Right. So basically, I was great for years. And then everyone, when it comes to health, or if they get into any kind of health issues, it feels like there's a tipping point. Like this thing happened and then I wasn't okay anymore. And that's what it was for me too. And so I did this really popular, trendy detox program, and I got violently sick really fast and nobody could figure it out. And so just to give you a little glimpse into what that was like for me, and this progressed and continued to worsen, was I got extremely exhausted, not just like, oh, I'm tired, could not like hold myself up. was so exhausted, but could not sleep for more than 2 hours. Heart palpitations. The skin on my face was cracking and bleeding and coming off, which was a problem because I was an actor at the time. So you can't have your face coming off. And I had a lot of really severe brain fog. And I got to the point where I couldn't eat solid food without it feeling like I was getting stabbed every time I ate anything. Like, it was so painful. I just wouldn't eat because I didn't want to go through the torture.
Mm.
And so I just kept losing weight and losing weight. And, living in LA, everyone's like, oh, you look so good. I'm like, I'm sick. I can't eat, And so I was going from doctor to doctor. I really didn't even know what holistic was. So I was going to legitimate medical doctors. And every single one of them not only told me nothing was wrong with me, my labs were normal, which felt crazy to me. I was so sick. I mean, I couldn't even stand up long enough to take a whole shower. I'd have to go take a break. And and it's like, to be told your labs are normal and that means nothing's wrong is very invalidating. And then, over time, just to give you an idea, that this went on for a decade. So my 30s were wiped out. And in the first year or so, people are kind of like patient. Some people drop off. But I really lost all of my friends, every single friend, because when you can't get a diagnosis and you can't show up for things because your health is so unpredictable and you never know how you're going to feel from day to day, moment to moment, you start to get a reputation for being a flake and you don't have a legitimate name for what's wrong with you.
Right.
So eventually your friends dump you. And so in my case, I lost what I was doing for a job. I lost my friends. I lost everything that I thought made me who I was as a person. And there was just nothing left to live for or hope for at that point.
So, yeah. So at that point, you're going to medical doctors. You're getting, the lab work's inaccurate, right? And I feel like some of us can relate to at least part of it, if not all of it, right? Even when we get sick with maybe a cold and it's like, okay, there's nothing, you're not congested. I don't know why you have a sore throat, but this is like magnified. What made you say, well, there's got to be something wrong. I'm going to seek alternative measures, because that's what we want, where we want to get people at, is the moment of like, I'm not going to give up. So where did that come from within you?
Well, there were multiple iterations of that because I had a lot of hopelessness that hit. When I went to, after a certain number of doctors, I basically tried every doctor I could. And part of the problem, and I know women will relate to this, is there's a stigma, and this is talked about generally in the community, that women get treated like a hysterical female when they go to the doctor for help if they can't find something in the labs. You really do get kind of eye rolled. And I remember sitting down with a GI doctor. I'll just give you a couple of examples of the fun experiences I had. Sitting down with the GI doctor, and I'm just going to imitate him. He was like, well, have you tried Pepto-Bismol? Because that could help. And I was like, are you kidding? I can't eat solid food. Like, this is not Pepto-Bismol. And it was like that with everyone I went to. And this one doctor at Cedars thought I was being poisoned. So he was trying to find out who I lived with. And because the symptoms were so weird. And I was like, well, I live with my Yorkie. So no.
That's a clever Yorkie if he's poisoning you.
Right. So they ran all these tests because he didn't believe I wasn't being poisoned. And when I went back in for the follow-up, the receptionist wouldn't even let me in. And she goes, oh, the doctor has decided he's not going to see you because there's nothing else he can do for you because you're not being poisoned. And I was like, what? I literally was like, you're not going to talk to me? And I was kind of like, I think that was a breaking point for me after that one. I wrote a really angry letter to the head of Cedars, and I got an apology letter, but I was so done after that last one, where I was like, I can't believe he won't even talk to me. I also didn't know where else to go. So at that point, I had a friend of a friend who had a brother who was what's called an osteopath. And an osteopath is a medical doctor, but they're taught to do the whole body, and they actually look at things differently than any other medical doctor would. So I drove really far out to see him, and he ran different tests than normal labs. A lot of you people don't realize there's other tests out there that don't get run by your medical doctor.
Right.
And he found a problem with my phase 2 liver function. And I was so happy that someone found a problem. I just was,
Yeah.
it gave me so much hope. So that was the first moment where I was about to give up, and then they found something. So phase 2 liver function, just to explain, is so phase 1 is when your body bags up all your trash, like in a bag, and phase 2 is it throws the trash out. So if phase 2 is not working, you've got bagged up trash and the body can't throw it out. So it gets thrown back into the system. So it's called auto intoxication. So you keep basically re-intoxicating yourself with these toxins. And if you're doing a detox program, when you have auto intoxication and can't dump the toxins, it messes you up. And
Yeah, it's basically helping to put everything together and put it to you in like concentrated forms, right?
Like you're poisoning yourself. Yeah.
Oh.
And so how it felt to me during that time, to give you a sense of reality, is like, have you ever gotten really drunk and the next day you just want to die? You are so sick, you feel nauseous, you have a headache, you can't think straight, you're blurry vision, and it's just miserable. That's how I felt all the time.
Oh, gosh.
Like every day, all day. And it's impossible to operate normally because you feel emotionally off, and also you're not sleeping. And so and that's why a lot of them were trying to tag me with depression. And I knew I wasn't depressed and the reason I was able to hang on to that is because I was like, there was an event. This didn't happen gradually. There was an event, and then I wasn't okay anymore. It has to be connected to that. Someone has to figure this out, you know? And so that was one of those turning points for me. So anyway, this osteopath was able to find a problem, but could not fix it.
Okay.
So he tried, and I want to talk about this phenomenon too. He tried to put me on these herbs for liver, gallbladder. And every time he gave me anything to take, it made me a lot sicker. And so he was kind of like, I don't know what to do about that. And the reason that was happening was because of all of the stuff I'd been taking for 3 months on the detox program had created an ultra sensitivity in my drainage organs to where putting me on an herb, which is also known as a nutraceutical, meaning it bypasses the nervous system to force the body to do something. It acts more like a drug would.
So the type of herbs he was putting you on were nutraceuticals.
All herbs are nutraceuticals.
Oh.
Yeah. And so basically the problem with that is that my body couldn't handle it because it just was too sensitized from what it had been through. And so what happens is if your nervous system, it's called neurogenic switching or neurogenic blocking. If that happens from too much overwhelm on the body that the body can't, it's sort of like a box of Christmas lights when they are all tangled up and you're like, I can't get this. It's like that. The body's like, I just can't untangle it. And so when that happens, nothing you take is going to work right. And so that was the beginning of the journey for me. And I didn't even find that guy until 5 years in.
Jeez. So from moment of first, because you started the detox because you weren't feeling well. So you're
no. So I was feeling fine. The detox, I had no symptoms. I was doing great. I was a little tired because, quite frankly, and that's a good segue. I was tired because I lived a super busy life. I was taking acting classes. I was performing. I was going out on auditions. I was running a business. I had a very busy social life. I was living la vida.
Okay.
I did partake in a lot of fun.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that. I also had been born and raised vegan, which we'll talk about in a second, and which ended up coming into play. And so what happened is in my acting class, there was a self-improvement group that a lot of people were taking to help them with auditions and things like that. And one of the things they recommended to make you perform better was this detox program because yeah. So basically that's what it came from. And I was like, well, I'm a little tired. That could work. And the reason I was tired is not only, and we'll get into the vegan thing in a second, but I was no joke. For those of you that know, like coffee bean and tea leaf is kind of like Starbucks for those of you that don't know coffee bean and tea leaf, but coffee bean and tea leaf was very popular at the time. It was bigger than Starbucks. And they had these big, this size. I would have like 2 or 3 of these a day, but like soy, artificial sweetener, lattes, like sugar-free aspartame, soy milk, like 2 or 3 of these.
Not so good.
So yeah,
well, I mean, it sounds like over the course of this whole period, the doctor was kind of right. You were being poisoned, but you were the culprit. You were poisoning yourself.
Yes, through my misguided attempts. And this is an important fact to note because a lot of us are trying to do what we think is healthy.
Right.
Like, I think I'm being healthy. First of all, everyone's doing coffee. It's not crack. Second of all, I'm doing soy, which I think is healthy. And I'm doing sugar-free, which I think is healthy. So,
yep,
we're getting a lot of wrong information out there.
We are.
Yeah. And so just to talk about the vegan thing for a second, what contributed to my condition was my dad is actually the founder of the entire animal rights movement in the US that started in the 70s. And so I was raised for ethical reasons to be vegan my whole life. So my organs and my body developed as a vegan, which does create what's called a choline deficiency, which affects your phase 2 liver function. So that was kind of the underlying, like if you think about drops in a bucket, you know, and you're like, boop, 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 boop. And then tipping point was the detox.
Right. Got it. So you had never eaten meat your entire life up until that point. Got it. All right. So now you found a doctor who's able to kind of say to you, we need to fix this. Here's how we can fix this. There was probably some trial and error with that as well, right?
So none of that worked with the osteopath. The next thing that happened after that is I was recommended to do hyperbaric oxygen. And for those of you that don't know what hyperbaric oxygen is, they use it for like strokes, for like diving accidents where people get what's called the bends. Yeah. And you lay in this tube and you get pure oxygen that you breathe in. And I got to say, it felt really good. It was like
I imagine
the Band-Aid. Yeah. So it was like, back then it was like 350 a session. It's probably like 500 a session now. And it was how I could function. But like, who's going to do 3 hyperbaric oxygen treatments a week at that price point?
Yeah.
You know? And it wasn't fixing anything. It was just a really expensive Band-Aid.
Right. It was treating the symptom. It wasn't treating the cause of it.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. It wasn't fixing the underlying source. And so I tried a lot of different, at that point, that was my first foray into holistic. So I tried a lot of different holistic things. I mean, I even drove out, there was a guy I found this technique called Neuralink. I've tried every holistic technique out there, TBM, total body modification, Neuralink, just you name it. I tried it.
Right.
And so he was the only advanced certified person in the United States. So he was in Vegas. So I literally like went there. I was just like, my mission was to get my health back. Now, as long as people were providing what they thought were answers, that was enough to keep me going.
Yeah.
And I did get a lot of expensive Band-Aids, but all of each point in the journey took me to the next part of the journey. And part of what's so hard for anyone who struggles with their health is you really get your hopes up with every new thing. You're like, this is it. This is it. This is going to work. And then when it doesn't, it destroys you.
Right. Right. You're almost better off had you not thought that it was going to work. Cause it's like it's the up and down.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the good part was that you were at least having people acknowledge we see something's wrong. That was why they were providing a treatment, albeit not working, but at least you're having people hear you. Were any of the treatments, pushing you in the other direction, or was it just like you weren't getting any positive? Oh, some of them did. Yeah.
Now, the reason for that is part of what we talked about before. If you have neurogenic blocking or switching, and that thing that's causing it isn't being addressed, then anything else you take to try to fix things is either going to not work or make you feel worse.
Okay.
And that's what was happening to me. And what was causing my neurogenic blocking was the choline deficiency, which was so severe at that point because this detox program had us taking synthetic supplementation, which is not good for your body. But the high levels of niacin and choline balance each other in the body. They're both different forms of vitamin B. And choline really impacts your nervous system as well. And so because I was taking um, the niacin and I was already choline deficient to begin with, it put me at dangerous levels, and nobody checks for that because first of all, who's been a vegan since birth at that
Right.
point? Like I was born in the 60s. Come on. You
Yeah,
know?
right. So does that what supplies that? It's because I'm fascinated. You know, I love to learn
Yeah.
information. So now I'm going to ask all these
Mhm.
scientifically. Can you get that from any like fish, chicken, beef, or is it
Red meat and eggs
red meat and eggs? Got
are
it.
the best sources for it. Yeah. In
So
terms
you
of like
weren't eating,
the
and I forgot. So with vegan, you don't eat eggs either.
no.
Okay, so oh my gosh, you have really hadn't been getting it. Is there a supplement that has choline in it, or is it?
Yeah, but it's not it's not a it's not like a replacement.
Yeah, it won't. Your body can't process it in the same regard.
It's not gonna
So,
yeah, it's not gonna work the same way.
so when they noticed that you were choline deficient, did they kind of immediately say to you, like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And you said, "Oh, well, because I haven't." Was it like you need to go and eat meat, or was it more like this is a potential cause? Like, what was kind of the process that they discovered that?
Nobody discovered it, I did.
Oh, okay.
So
Hence the
that's how
reason that we're here. Okay.
right. So what happened was, ultimately after the Vegas scenario, which went on for quite a long time, I and the other thing I wanna mention that, when you were talking before about not giving up hope, how do you keep going? When I did get to a point where I just wanna backtrack on that for a second. When I did get to a point where I don't wanna say I was suicidal, I just wouldn't have minded dying. I was like,
Mhm.
and I also thought I was dying. So I definitely it vacillated between um please take me because the pain and the discomfort of being in my body felt like a prison. I used to call it an invisible prison. And it was so it made me feel powerless, and it made me feel like a waste of a person. Like
Mm.
why am I here? I'm I'm producing nothing for anyone. I'm just a waste. And managing that was tricky because I just didn't see the point on going on because I was given no hope that I was ever going to get back to normal. Like a lot of people actually said, well, you're just going to have to learn to live with this. Like it was going to be my new normal. The problem was it wasn't even staying the same, it was worsening. So, I was terrified. And so sometimes I would just think, well, I'm definitely dying. There's no way anyone goes through this and lives.
And live.
And so a lot of times when I went to bed, I would just go, okay, I'm not going to wake up. And like, is the house clean? Am I, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like how are they going to find me? You know, stuff like that.
Right.
So I lived alone, and didn't have any friends left at that point. And then the other thing that would happen is I would think about if I should kill myself. And what prevented me from doing that was my parents. More so, not even like I had a close relationship with them because I really didn't, but they're both Holocaust survivors. And I just couldn't imagine putting them, I'm their only child. And I was like, this would destroy them. So that was the main reason I didn't do it because I didn't see a point in staying here at
Right.
all. And then I ended up getting a dog, the Yorkie, or about like a couple of years into the illness. I had the Yorkie when I went to that guy who was seeing if I got poisoned, but I got the Yorkie a couple of years into being sick because I needed something that needed me in order to get up every day that I had to feed and take out. And there were days where I was so sick I couldn't even walk and I would have to let her out, you know,
Huh.
and but but she really kept me going aside from the companionship and the love, which was like, you know,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Nobody loves like a dog. Right.
yeah, it's so unconditional. But yeah, so So that was another tactic that kind of kept me going. And uh, it was especially hard when some people were literally um, disinviting me to things, like I really got turned against at one point because people just thought I was nuts. Because I just couldn't get answers. And so I started developing these tactics where I would just say, "Oh, I'm just really busy. It's hard for me to commit. I've got a lot going on." And I just started lying to people and not talking about my illness anymore and a lot of communication was through text. So just because I didn't want to have to explain myself anymore because I was so tired of people invalidating it. So yeah, and then it just devolved into no more communications.
Right. So you didn't really even have a support network other than your Yorkie. You didn't have a support
No,
network. You were getting no answers from medical practitioners. You were, trying to
yeah,
discover things. You were in essence going through all the right steps. I mean, some people have
no,
health crises because they don't seek medical attention. Yours was not
right.
that. You were like,
Yeah.
tell me what to do and I will run through fire to make this
Yeah.
better.
I literally would have run through fire if they told me to. Like
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
have done anything. I was so compliant. Anyway, so to get back to what you were saying about the choline deficiency, eventually what happened was when I was in Vegas, this is such a funny story. Um prior to the Vegas guy, there was someone else we had seen who did this technique called NRT, which is the technique that I'm certified in. But prior to that, when I was just acting and sick, the this one practitioner was doing it and I wasn't getting any better with her. And then I went to the Vegas guy and I was just looking online to see if I could find anything. And I stumbled upon these test kits for NRT that you could buy online. And I was like, I wonder why we can buy these online. This is so weird. And this was like early 2000s or maybe it was like more towards like 2007. And I had gotten sick in 2000. And so I was like, I'm gonna buy them. And so I bought them. And it comes with like this DVD that shows you how to do basic muscle testing. And I'm like, I don't know how I got away with that. Then I get a phone call. I get a phone call and they're like, "Oh, we saw that you bought our test kits." And I was like, "Oh, busted." And they were like, "Would you like to come get some training?" And I was like, and so, but I skipped over an important point. The person I'd been seeing who did the NRT, I can't believe I skipped that point. You and I talked about
Yeah,
this.
because I was like, how did you I was trying to figure out like how
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what made you go like, I'm gonna go out and buy some equipment that I don't even know what it does.
Well, because the person I was seeing before the Vegas guy was doing this technique, and she was doing it on me like twice a week for a long time, like almost a year. And so what happened was it's kind of funny because you and I talked about this yesterday, but what happened was this is how the starting eating meat thing came up. When I went to her, she was she did testing on me, the muscle testing, and she goes, well, I can't help you as a vegan. Your body's not going to heal. So if you're not going to eat meat, I can't move forward with you. And at that point, my dad had come out and was helping me because I degraded so much that I couldn't even drive or take care of myself.
Right.
So he was with me, and because he's head of the animal rights movement, there was no way.
Right.
So so I was like, okay, what we're gonna do is keep looking. Thank you so much. And the whole car ride home with my dad is just silent. I'm like looking out the window and I'm like,
So were you at that point thinking like, I really think I wanna eat meat? You
yeah,
were, but you just didn't wanna say it. Got
yeah,
it.
because this was the first person. One thing I didn't mention is every single person I went to, in doctors, holistic, anybody, I told all of them I wanted to disclose anything. I was like, I have been a vegan since birth. Does that matter? No, what you eat doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, okay. And so she was the first person. And I was like, hmm. And so then I went home and like beelined up the stairs, went into the bathroom, shut the shower door thing, and I got on my little flip phone and I was like, eat the meat, doctor. I'll eat the meat. And, and then I went in and told my dad, she said she would give it a try without the meat because I needed him to be on board. And I figured, okay, if I eat the meat and it doesn't work, because this is now 7 years into this, I'm like,
Right.
I'll eat my own poop if I have to. Like, tell me what to do. So,
Right.
so basically, he was like, all right, because I needed him to be on board with it. So then I did start eating meat, which was very tricky because I had to sneak it. And again, it's the whole point is not to eat conventional factory farmed meat. It was like
Right. Right.
raised, grass fed, organic, which is tricky in and of itself.
Right.
And so I started eating not red meat. My thing was, I'm just going to do the fish and the chickens and the eggs. And then I'm not going to mess with the bigger animals because of the ethical reasons. I was
Right.
like, these are less intelligent. I'm going to go with I was trying to like make my peace with it. And so then, I really got like 50% better. And then I hit a wall and then no better. And then, so I was at that point when I went to the Vegas guy because I couldn't make any more progress with her. But I had watched her doing the test kits and everything. And I was just desperate for anything. So that's how I stumbled on them because I was looking for what I had just done because I'd gotten the most progress with her.
Right.
So anyway, so then they asked me to come train and I was like, oh, so, and that was in Florida. So then I went and did that, but I was still really sick. Like there were times I couldn't come out of my hotel room or I was like throwing up or I couldn't like get up or, it was still tricky, but it was better than it was. And so we were twinned up with other people and they were teaching us how to do the testing and how to do the body scans. And when we were training, even my teacher tried to figure me out and couldn't do it. And so, which is crazy, I know. And so me and the girl I was twinning with, we figured out that gallbladder was the priority. And in the guide they give you for like organs and supplements, choline was one of the gallbladder supplements. And we were like, and so we just kind of figured it out through trial and error combined with the training we were getting.
Right.
And then when I started doing some Googling, it wasn't even part of the training. I saw that niacin and choline balance each other. And I was like, no wonder, and I knew where choline came from. And so, because I'd been researching it, because I'm like, why am I needing choline? Why am I needing choline? So at that point, I was like, oh, it comes from meat and eggs. So, and then finding out that all this high doses of niacin they were giving me was making it worse. I was like, all right, everything makes sense. And that was like when everything started to break for me. So
yeah, I mean, well, and so at that point, that was when you tried red. That's when you said I'm going to add red meat in, right?
Well, yes and no. At that point, I was doing the choline and I was eating meat and not meat, chicken, fish, and eggs. I hated the fish, but I did it. And then I went and saw another doctor because again I hit a wall, and I was still I wasn't like advanced trained in the technique yet, so I was still learning. So we would fly back and forth. And I went to this guy in Malibu who at the time, I don't know what he charges now. He charged $500 for every 15 minutes. This is like back in, I know. So now he's probably like $1,000 for me. I don't even know, but it was a lot. Yeah. And he did this really crazy muscle testing on me that was like, and I was like, oh my God. And he
like a muscle testing ninja.
Yes, that's what it felt like. And he goes, you need red meat. And I was like, I'm not doing red meat. He was like, you're not going to get any better unless you start doing red meat. And I was like, so I'm like, once again, I'll try it and I hope it doesn't work,
Yeah.
And it totally worked. So
I had that experience with gluten and dairy. I was having some issues with my hormones, and my primary was like, you could try going off gluten and dairy. The dairy I was kind of okay with. The gluten, I was like, oh man, I really don't want to. But I'm like, but I'll try it. And then it worked. And I was like, dang it. I want to just be able to eat whatever bread I want. So yeah, I mean, it is hard when you realize you're going to have to make changes to what has been your quality of life, or at least your life
I wasn't
choices.
Even doing it for health reasons. I was doing it for ethical reasons. So it was a real ethical dilemma. It was a moral dilemma because it wasn't my choice even. I was raised like that. So I was really like betraying how I was raised. And my dad, so both of my parents are Holocaust survivors, and my dad speaks on this all over the world. And he made a connection. So when he was a scientist and working for the EPA, he was assigned to assess conditions at a factory farm slaughterhouse. And this was in the 70s or early 70s, I believe. And it might have been in the 60s. Anyway, he was shocked at the conditions, the blood, the body parts, the screaming. Like there was all this stuff that brought him back to the Holocaust and what he witnessed growing up. And so in that moment, he was like, this is why I survived. I'm going to change this, you know? And he quit his job and devoted his life to saving animals and stopping the factory farming. That's his movement. And
Right.
he made a huge difference. I mean, he did these huge events. He was on every talk show. He was on in the news all the time. He was in articles and
Right.
And he started producing these huge events every year, coast to coast, with all these different plenaries and talks and experts and booths and information and education, helping to people to understand, because a lot of people didn't know about factory farming back then or what they were doing at the slaughterhouses. So for me, starting to eat meat was like eating my family. Like,
right. And it was betraying, it was betraying the moral code you'd been raised by, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really tricky. And it did take about a year for me to tell him. And then when I told him, I was like, look, I did it as an experiment. You know, I tried to get well as a vegan forever. I tried to do just the supplements. It didn't work. And I deserve to have this quality of life. I've had 10 years taken from me, you know? And I was like, if it didn't work, I wouldn't have continued, but it worked and I'm never going to stop. I never want to even risk feeling like that again. I lost so much time. And, you know, and my dad weirdly can relate to the lost time because he lost 7 years in the Holocaust, you know, and so that part he got, but it took him about another year before he came to, I mean, I took a risk of losing my dad forever.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, and to be clear, to your point, like there's factory farming, and then there's a lot of practices that are put in place right now where
Yeah.
animals are living wonderful, amazing lives, and they do
Yeah.
humane practices so that they're not screaming and they're not scared, and all of those things aren't happening, which benefits the animals living more humane lives, and it also creates healthier products that we consume. So, you know, we are omnivores, right? I mean, by nature, our bodies. So I guess, and I'm wondering if there's any truth to this, and if this is even something you could speak to. I mean, is it the case that everybody could have that? Is there a blood type that?
I knew you were going to ask about blood type.
Well, yeah, I'm just curious. You read my mind. Like, I guess it's interesting because, you know, like some solutions you could say, well, this is a solution that works for everybody. And then there's some solutions that are only going to be helpful for people if they have this deficiency or this type of condition or this type of, so is there any truth to that? Like that it's by person, or is it really across the board?
So the answer is yes and no, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
So it's not about the blood type. That was a nice friend. But anyway, here's the deal. I mean, you can also bring genetic mutations into it because everyone's talking about that now. But it's like, it's the same thing as blood type. Anything can be addressed. Here's the deal, though. Human bodies work the same if they are in the same base state. The way human body is designed biologically to work is perfect. Now, that being said, stuff happens along the way.
Right.
And so every single person's body theoretically performs best on a paleo style diet without grains, without dairy, especially pasteurized dairy, without sugar, without, you know, soy, and doing organic, because the pesticides we use in this country are outlawed in other countries. Pesticides in general are extreme immune suppressors and they impact your digestion, your hormone balance, and the list goes on.
Okay.
Now, the way the 5 layers to illness works, which I have a video you can check out, the initial suppression on immune function, what starts symptoms is toxicity. So if you think about, if you're pouring water in a colander and you pour it in too fast and it can't come out of the holes fast enough, it starts to overflow.
Okay.
Same thing in the body. If there's too much toxicity for the body to process and dump, or your phase 2 liver is compromised,
Right.
then it starts to cumulatively build up, get stuck in the tissues, and it causes overwhelm, and it starts to impact the nervous system and the body's ability to do its job properly. And that interferes with the body's ability to make the digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid it needs to break down and use your food for nutrients and for repair and to protect itself. And then people have trouble eating meat, and they say meat's not good for me, but it's not the meat. It's the body,
the other things, right?
Interruption with its ability to make what it needs in order to use it properly. So it's like, what comes first, right? The chicken or the egg? So basically, and then when it goes on for long enough and keeps building up, it turns into what we call an allergic state, where the body, so an allergy is an inflamed immune response. So that buildup causes food allergies, environmental allergies, because the body's autoimmune response kicks in. Mm-hmm. So then
too much of anything, I get you're saying, right? Too much of anything can cause that.
But nobody knows that they're doing too much of it, because we're living what the FDA says is okay to live. So it doesn't seem to be a problem with them putting chlorine and fluoride in the water and allowing pharmaceutical drugs in the water and all the metals in the water and the parasites and the pathogens. But you're bathing in it, you're showering in it, you're making coffee and tea with it, you're cooking with it, you're drinking it, or you're using a bad filter for it. You know what I mean? So like right there, you're getting an insane amount of toxins that our ancestors didn't have. And then in addition to that, don't even get me started with the meds people are put on and what large percentage are even on antidepressants, because the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with them. So they just stick them on antidepressants so they won't feel the physical symptoms.
Right.
And then metal fillings. How many of us, especially in my age group, I had like 11 or 12 metal fillings. So that mercury toxicity impacts the thyroid, and that affects your mineral balance, your ability to absorb minerals, which affects your anxiety, which affects your energy levels, which affects your hormones. So there's all of these things, and then we get into like EMF. Like, we didn't used to have cell phones. We didn't used to have cell towers. We didn't used to have 5G. And then we get into the pesticides being used now that weren't being used before. Then we get into the factory farming, like we were talking about, where these animals in the factory farms are being injected with hormones, they're being injected with antibiotics because they're trying to get them bigger and they're trying to kill the disease. And you're eating that. You're eating synthetic hormones and antibiotics, which are affecting your immune system, and they're also toxic. And they're being kept in horrible conditions where their stress levels are high and they're scared and terrified. So their cortisol levels are high, which you're then ingesting, which affects your stress levels. And they're laying in their own filth, and they have open sores, and it's an absolutely horrific situation. Yeah. And so these are all the things that are affecting us.
Right.
And so part of what I teach is how to live in this day and age and handle all that stuff. And there's way more. I mean, the list goes on, it's like all the aluminum and the plastic and blah, blah, blah. I mean, and so these things are not tolerable at the levels we're being exposed to them now as compared to 20, 30 years ago. And don't even get me started on how many people are using microwaves.
Oh, do you not use a microwave? Oh, gosh.
It alters the molecular structure of the food, and then the body can't recognize it properly and doesn't know what to do with it. I have a whole article on it in my online program. There's articles, and there have been lawsuits. Like, they used to use microwaves to warm blood and for transfusions, but the people would die if they had microwaved blood. They've done tons of experiments with
that just sounds awful. Even though I didn't know that, I think warming blood with a microwave sounds like a bad idea.
But that's what they did back then, because they didn't know it was a problem, Right. Because if it's just heating, then what's the problem?
Oh, gotcha. So what do you put it in boiling water? Is that how they warm it now?
Oh, I don't know how they do it now.
No. I'm like, no idea. How do you warm up blood before you give it to somebody? Yeah. Deep thoughts by Deb and Monica. So I guess, and it's so for me, and I'm sure there are other people, right? And you start to kick into this, right? Like, I hear you saying all those things. Most of them I knew. I mean, some of them I don't know all of the science behind them, but we've heard them a lot. And you really try to do the best you can with like eating healthy and making sure you're checking your ingredients. Somebody had said to me, if you can't pronounce it, it shouldn't be on the ingredients. Like, as a good rule of thumb, I'm like, okay. So there are different things that we can do. But there's a lot. And like, with everything that you just said, if I walked around my house, or if you walked around my house with me, you'd be like, no. I'm sure of that. I'm not embarrassed. It's just the reality. What are some simple things we can do? I mean, obviously joining your community and taking a lot of steps would create the best results, because we all have to figure out where our deficiencies or surpluses are and level them out. But what's
Yeah.
something that you say most people probably do or don't do that they could one change people could make? Like whether it's I don't know, I don't even want to suggest something because somebody might hear it and think that I'm suggesting it. What is something that you would say most people could do?
So, the immune repair food list is a good place to start. That is free on my website, and we can put the link in your YouTube as well. And that's at treatthesource.com/food. And it lists the do's and don'ts. And basically, what it says in there is to eliminate sugar, dairy, wheat, and soy. It's even better if you can eliminate all grains, but it also tells you the do's and don'ts. So it tells you what kind of animal protein to do, how much protein you should be
Okay.
getting. You should really be eating protein 3 times a day. If you're not, then you're protein deficient, I promise you.
How many
Um,
grams did you say?
I didn't say grams.
Oh,
You should be eating animal protein 3 times a day.
oh, 3 times a
You
day.
could do
Okay.
like a palm-sized serving minimum, but you
Okay.
can't have enough. There's no such thing as too much.
Okay.
And then everything needs to really be as much organic as possible. And you want to also avoid a lot of hidden ingredients and bad oils. So canola oil is terrible for you. They use it in almost every restaurant. It's in almost everything you buy. There was a whole story about how canola oil got imported to the US from Canada, and it was a whole PR thing. And they paid a lot of money for that. And I get into the details about what canola oil does to you in the membership as well. And then we also avoid a lot of fillers and things. There's a lot of hidden, if you see natural flavors, that's a no-no. Stay away from that. That's hidden. You want to avoid gums, carrageenan gum, guar gum. They put that in a lot of stuff. Tapioca and cassavas and everything now. Those are bad for you. If you look at where they came from, they were poisonous plants. So these are just a starter for that, and making sure you're doing pasture raised, grass fed, organic, knowing the difference between the things. It's really about educating yourself. It's kind of like back in the day when we got a VCR. There was no way you could work that thing without an owner's manual. It's the same thing. Like, you were given this body and nobody gave you the owner's manual to live today. Today
Right.
is not the same as 40 years ago.
Right.
Today
Right.
is today. And no one's been given an owner's manual for how to be here today. And that's what this is. I mean, inside
Right.
the membership, we give you the owner's manual.
So, and I guess, and what you were saying before is that ideally, though you don't have to give everything up, but ideally, most people would function better without dairy and wheat in their diet.
If you don't give everything up, you're not going to get the results.
Got
It's
it.
not going to work.
Well, I meant
Because
just in general. Like, what if you've got no symptoms? Like, let's just say in general, if you're well, maybe you think you're okay, but in general, most people would optimally function better without dairy and wheat.
let me answer what you just said for a second. The definition of I don't have symptoms is hilarious, because can I tell you how many people I've talked to that are like, I don't have any symptoms. And then when I dig further, oh, well, yeah, my hair is falling out, but that's not a big deal. That's normal. Oh,
Got
yeah,
it.
I don't really sleep through the night,
Tired.
but
Yeah.
because everyone thinks things are normal that aren't. So that's one thing.
Fair point.
The other thing is we've been conditioned to think of symptoms as normal.
Yeah.
Or just you have to learn to live with it, or you're not 20 anymore, or whatever the case may be. It's like psh. And so then the other thing is, in order for your body to work properly, and if you look at the video from the 5 layers to illness, we've got toxicity as the bottom layer. Then it impedes your ability to make the digestive enzymes and hydrochloric acid you need, so you're not utilizing your nutrients properly. Then it puts you in an allergic state, which is an inflamed immune response. And you may not know you're allergic. It could be like you get tired or you get a headache, and it's not like always traditional allergy as we think of
Right.
it. Then your body's ability to fight off pathogens is compromised, because as a mammal, you get exposed to parasites, fungus, bacteria, and virus all the time because you're a mammal. It's part of being a mammal, and you can't avoid it. And so you have a bouncer, right? At your door, and it's like, nope, 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 not you, not you, not you. And so what happens is these bacteria and pathogens and parasites, they're like a criminal looking for an open car door. They're just going down the street trying to open doors,
Right. Right.
And if your bouncer's on a coffee break because you have too much toxicity in your system and you're eating food that feeds the bugs, it's like, let me lay out a buffet for you. Please
Right.
come in. Oh, let me give you some dairy and some sugar. I know you like that. It'll help you grow like a chia pet.
Right. Right.
So, like, basically, if you're going to put out a buffet for them, they're going to not only come, but they're going to tell all their friends. So, then you get to the fifth layer, which is diagnosed in labs. I found SIBO. I found, I can't even think of the other one now that's so common these days, but all the bacterial overgrowth or the, oh my God, I'm spacing on it. But anyway, you get diagnosed issues once you get to the fifth layer. But all that stuff is going on before you even get to abnormal labs that are causing symptoms, because we're so suppressed by our environment today. So we're just feeling symptoms sooner on the disease chain. So if you're not eating in the right way, that's like saying, well, sometimes I'm going to put gas in the car, but sometimes I'm going to put water in the gas tank.
Right.
Like,
no, and it's so true. I mean, I'm checking in my head, right? I'm checking myself, thinking about like, oh, I keep saying, oh, I'm sure this fatigue will wear, but you do really need to be attentive to it. So the bottom line is, go to check that list and look what you can do to optimize your health.
Yeah. And join the membership. It's only $29 a month. It's like Netflix for the body.
Yeah.
No brainer, And I'm like, if it's not your cup of tea, cancel.
Right. No, absolutely. Without a doubt. Well, and because there's a few different pieces to it, because you're not only providing the tips to live healthy today, like you just said. I think that's really critical, because we do feel sometimes overwhelmed when we hear about all the unhealthy things that are out there, like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I can eat or what I can do. So I think being given the instruction manual, but I think the support too, to be told that, like, this is the reason why you're feeling poorly, because you're not feeding your system optimally, right? Like, to your example about the car, if we watch somebody put water in the car, we wouldn't then go, why isn't the car running okay? But we just don't know. And so acknowledging that we don't know and getting that information, I think that's brilliant. And you certainly empower people to feel comfortable being like, I still don't feel good. Okay, let's talk about why that might be. Because you can't just eat healthy. You also have to get enough sleep. You have to make sure you get sunlight.
You have to prioritize accordingly, to take proper care of your car.
Right.
Because if you're not, then your car's not going to run well. It's going to sputter. It may not start. So, the bottom line is, it's not just food. Food's a part of it. Food's an important part of it. But like, you also have to check your oil, get your brakes done, your tires,
Right. The whole piece.
And it is what it is. The body's not gonna, the body works the way the body works. There's no way around that. It's just how it works, And so if you have too much toxic burden in your daily life and you've been feeding the bugs, if you don't make the changes, it's, even if you're not having symptoms now, which okay.
I know, you're right. As soon as I said it, I thought, oh, wait a minute.
Then you will later. And it'll feel like it's coming out of nowhere, but it's cumulative. And then you go, oh, tipping point.
Yeah. All right. So good to know, first off, too, because I had somebody tell me that, oh, you're A+ blood type, your body doesn't digest red meat well. And I'm like, okay, good to know. But that's completely inaccurate. I mean, I didn't really change much about it. I balanced, although hearing that I could eat a little bit more red meat is certainly a nice thing.
I advise red meat every single day, and I eat it every day, a minimum of once a day, if not more. I mean, I'm 58. I eat eggs and red meat every day. But the thing is that what a lot of people, and again, it has to be pasture raised, grass fed, organic. If you're doing conventional meat, and I just did a video about this yesterday on Instagram, they're also injecting all of the pork and the cattle and the chickens with mRNA vaccine, and have been for years now. And so when you see antibiotic free, it's not mRNA free. FYI.
Yeah.
And that's kind of experimental. That's their way of trying to avoid disease in the animals. So you really have to get the right kind of animal protein. You just can't get away with not doing that. They will do opposite things to your body. Conventional factory farmed animal protein will actually cause disease and make you sick. And pasture raised, grass fed, organic will heal your body. They will do opposite things, but you have to be consistent. Consistency is key. Right. You have to change your priorities. If it's a pain in the butt, then you have a problem with priorities.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, there's a whole series of questions I would ask about, cholesterol and things like that. But I think, like, I don't want to digress. Everybody's got their own particular medical conditions that they'll have to sort out. But at the bottom line is, to perform optimally, you have to give your body.
And I have very specific answers about cholesterol inside the membership as well.
I will check those out. You can be sure of it. So tell everybody, like, again, how you get in touch with you, because, like, I'm sure everybody's like, wait a minute.
So at treatthesource.com, that's the membership, and all of my handles on social are Treat the Source. And but as far as inside the membership, we also do guest health expert interviews where you can ask them anything, and you can optionally work with a lot of different people that I vetted and that I bring in there on all kinds of different specialties, including hormones, including emotional health, including heart health, including pets, holistic pets, like so many things, that emotional eating, we cover a lot in there. And so you get exposed to people and techniques you would have never known about otherwise. That's all included. In addition to, we have the 12 module online health reboot that walks you through not just the education, but action steps to take on a gradient, so it's not overwhelming. And then I'm in there for any questions or any support needed every day. So I take off Sundays.
You take a day off? No, you're never off. You're always going. You're like, "Oh, I'm just seeing that. Take a little
Right.
bit." No, I know you. You prioritize self-care, but you also do.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You do put the work in. So I
Yeah, and
appreciate it.
we talk about mindset in there too. Like I teach a lot of techniques for, for certain types of self-care that help you with the mindset and with the starting out the day in a way where you'll win, instead of like triggers where you screw up and like, I forgot to plan for my meals and I ended up going to McDonald's and stupid things like that.
Right.
Like I give you strategies to deal with all of that.
Yeah, I guess, because that was one of the things I think is going to be important too, is if you do have when you're stuck in
I'm
a
so
situation.
busy.
Yeah, or you're just stuck in a situation. I don't know, your plane breaks, your plane gets delayed, you didn't bring food, right? You've got to eat something. What is the best case scenario? You're going to have to, you have to choose to eat. So,
these are
all
all
right.
good questions. Yeah, I love it.
Final thought for everybody, other than, eat healthy, but I'm sure there's some deep thing that you want to share. Well, let me preface this, but without putting you on the spot, being like, share your thought, Monica. It could be funny, it can be inspirational, it can be whatever you would like it to be. What is a last thought you would like to leave with everybody?
I always say two things: treat the source, not the symptom. You will find a lot of times people are advising you to do things that treat the symptom. If your thyroid's not acting the way it's supposed to, if you take a drug, you're just treating the symptom of the thyroid not acting the way it's supposed to. You're not looking at why the thyroid's not acting the way it's supposed to. Same for any symptom in the body. Instead of taking a drug to make it be the way you want it to be, if you don't fix why it's happening, it's going to turn into a different symptom somewhere else, and you're not even going to know it was related to the first one. And then the other thing I want to say is, if you think something's wrong, something's wrong. It's not in your head. I don't care what anyone says to you. I don't care if people believe you or not. If something feels off to you, it's off. And there are ways to deal with that and to address it. And you don't have to live with it, and you don't have to feel like a crazy person.
Woo! Yeah. Monica for president after that one. I love it. It's election year. I shouldn't be talking about presidents right now, but that was probably not the hashtag that I want to get picked up. But I appreciate you very much. I'm in my head got a list of questions that I'm going to write down. I'll be checking out all the materials in your membership and certainly recommending it. My family is going to get some additional instruction. I've been over the course of the last few years really trying to concentrate, but you definitely have given me a lot more to think about. And that's when you and I have spoken before, and I've watched your stuff, but you just added tidbits that I was like, oh, geez, I didn't know that. So definitely, we should get you a shirt that says choline for the win. Thank you for your time, for your energy, for your stories, and for your passion about this and your willingness to be really vulnerable and talk about how you got to where you were, what it was like to go through it. The emotional dynamics of it. I mean, I think that's a really powerful topic. I'm sure there are other folks out there who, for ethical reasons, have chosen not to consume meat. And it's hard. And for you to kind of be able to nurture people through this is not a kind of a callous thing that I'm saying. I'm really just interested in people feeling the best that they can feel.
And also not supporting the factory farming, not buying or eating the food that is being produced by the factory farm slaughterhouses, because we don't want to support them.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, this is the longest one so far. In 45 seconds, it's going to be an hour. So I feel like that was something, but I love it. I could talk to you forever. Today's conversation, we were focusing on all of those health things, but just your stories in general. I love the way you educate. I was a teacher, a high school teacher. And there was a couple times where you're saying something, and I'm like, oh gosh, she's such a natural teacher. When you're like, it's like the
Aw.
bouncer, it's like that's why our brains need, we really need those symbols because we're not all well schooled in nutrition and biology. So, um,
Yeah.
thank you for being so open. I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody that joined us, whether you're live or you're watching it recorded. We really appreciate you being here. And then I'll let you say goodbye to whoever you would like to say goodbye to.
Well, such a pleasure to always be with you. Honestly, Deb, you're one of my favorite people. And thank you, everybody. And reach out to me on social media or, through the website, and please connect with me. Just connect.
Yeah, absolutely. Or ask me and I will introduce you to Monica because I
Yeah.
definitely get you in touch with it. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye.